This is a compilation of my base spotlight series for people who don't like YouTube shorts. I hope you enjoy. I think you might want to consider the apartments above the food market as a potential base. Situated in the heart of downtown West Point, the food market is often overshadowed by the newer, larger Gigamart. While the Gigamart does stock significantly more food, the food market has a much more expansive second floor, offering similar looting and living opportunities to two standard homes. Adjoining the food market is a hardware store, where you should expect to acquire weapons, tools, and seeds. With just one staircase leading off the ground floor, the apartments are relatively easy to secure with a simple furniture barricade or by tactically removing some of the flooring near the top of the stairs. From the second floor, you can exit through a window right out onto the roof of the post office, which can serve as a roof garden or a fighting platform, and a great place to set up a generator. The storage lots on the east side of town are your best bet to find a generator. The location is within walking distance to two different gas stations. For those looking to really put down roots, you can even find an antique oven in a shed to the southwest. I think you might want to consider the West Point lake houses as a potential base. 3 two-story houses sit alone in the woods, nestled between a small lake and the Ohio River. Despite their isolated location, the houses are fully accessible by sealed roads, so you don't have to worry about getting locked in once the trees start growing. Given the distance, you are going to want to maintain a vehicle for trips to West Point or beyond, and unfortunately the nearest gas station is at the opposite end of West Point itself. The houses have enough room to meet your storage needs without feeling abandoned. For groups, well, there are 3 houses, and plenty of room to build more. One of the houses even comes with a tall barred fence surrounding it, although unless you're playing on unusual settings, there are virtually no zombies in the area, and it's outside of a respawn zone. 2 of the 3 houses come with fireplaces, but there's an antique oven you can claim at just a short walk around the lake. If the location is lacking anything, it's action and originality, but it's one of the all-time classic bases. I think you might want to consider the Rosewood construction site as a potential base. Located just down from the very popular Rosewood fire station, the construction site has a lot going for it. Good road access, a whole town of loot within walking distance, a gas station just down the road. On apocalypse settings, you're going to get some respawn in the area, but it shouldn't be anything the existing perimeter walls can't handle. The construction site begins life with 3 trailers set up in it. These have plumb sinks, ovens, microwaves, televisions, and even a mini fridge. All the amenities to support you in the early game. If you like small bases, then one or more of the existing structures could serve you well in the long term. But where the location really shines is the wide open space to build your own home, as large as you'd ever want and with plenty of space for cars. What the location is surprisingly lacking is weapons, tools, and construction material, which you will have to source elsewhere. There is a small lake relatively nearby, suitable for periodic fishing trips, but too far to depend on for watering any crops. A great location for people who want to build their own base without being miles from the action. I think you might want to consider the farm south of the Pony Romo as a potential base. Recently evacuated, the area consists of a 2-story house, a tool shed, a barn, and a stable. Most importantly, the farm has a functioning well. Infinite clean water for you and your crops. While the farm isn't especially close to any major settlement, it is more or less in the center of 6 different towns. The nearby area provides a variety of different foraging zones, but no water you can fish in within even a moderate car trip. There are a dozen homes just a short ways to the north that you can loot, but be aware the area is way more infested with zombies than you'd expect. Another problem is road access. While the farm is close to the road, it isn't that close. There is a winding dirt path you can drive, but this goes through zombie country, and once you've survived a few months, the path will be a tangle of trees and bushes. A good option for people who want the safety net the well provides, while not being completely cut off from the rest of the map. The house also has very cute wallpaper. I think you might want to consider this empty riverbank as a potential base. The location boasts nothing, or seemingly so. There are no existing structures and no nearby towns to loot. On further examination, this might be a really good spot if you want to build your own base from scratch, well away from the decaying remains of the old world. You might think that any secluded spot would do, but this spot comes with good road access. It has enough trees to work with, but also good open sight lines. The area is quiet and out of the standard respawn zones. You've got the ability to build right on the Ohio River, literally on the river if you prefer. There's lots of things you ought to have before building your own base, but the absolute top of the list for me would be a good utility vehicle or van. Along the riverbank, you're going to find isolated houses you can loot for furniture, but you don't want to be moving heavy objects back to your base one at a time. There is a single small house down the road and off a dirt track, but if you get there early enough, it's still going to have power and water, which might help while constructing your base. I think you might want to consider the gated houses in East Louisville as a potential base, though simply reaching and securing the area can be a lot of work. After completing negotiations with the existing tenants, you'll find 3 two-story houses surrounded by tall fences, with just a single point of access for any trespassers. You are going to have to deal with uninvited guests, however, as the region is heavily populated. The fenced-off area is sizable, and the central core comes with pre-built lampposts. Although large portions of the yard are foraging dead zones, there is enough zones tagged as vegetation to still be of use. More importantly, there is a small pond right there on the property for all your fishing needs. Though there are much more sizable and impressive mansions deeper into LV, the 3 houses still come with the expected residential amenities, plus 2 of the houses come with fireplaces. The area is lacking in more specialized looting opportunities, such as a bookstore. The gated community just to the south has dozens of sheds where you can look for weapons, tools, and generators. I think you might want to consider a Louisville mansion as a potential base. To the southeast of Louisville's Iroquois Park, a collection of unique and resplendent mansions sit in a horseshoe surrounding a smaller park. This location has an air of exclusivity about it, perfect if you're dying to move in a house that's already gorgeously decorated. A daring location for the discerning survivor, the mansions have ready access to a wealth of looting opportunities, including 2 nearby book collections and a gas station. The park provides enough wood for any conceivable construction project, and local water features are capable of supplying you with water for your crops or a preposterous amount of fish. That level of access comes with a high price tag in terms of the number of zombies you're going to be facing off against. With the placement of low fences, you will have to leave any vehicles out on the road, but over time you could turn a neighbouring mansion into an unusually fancy looking garage. Which mansion you settle in is up to you. There are lots of good choices and they're all worth exploring. I think you might want to consider the North Muldraugh warehouse as a potential base. This is another one of those classic Zomboid bases. Being a warehouse, the place is loaded with weapons, tools, and construction materials. And if you're going to base up there, you don't even need to cart it all off. The building doesn't have many points of entry to secure, and it's large enough to store multiple vehicles inside. The building has stairs leading up to a sizable roof, which is a great place to farm and secure a generator. There is just a single staircase leading off the ground floor, making it easy to defend with a barricade or by turning it into a flying fortress. The nearest gas station is halfway across town, but if you measure the distance in zombies, it feels like it's much further. You can clear to it, but if you're using default apocalypse respawn, you're never going to keep it clear. The only place in Muldraugh to find significant acacia books is even further down the highway. There is a pond fairly close to the warehouse, however it has terrible road access, which will get worse as the months pass. Security, while still being in the thick of it and without having to journey to Louisville. You might want to consider the highway intersection south of Muldraugh as a potential base. This is one of those locations you might end up in after doing the walk of shame out of Muldraugh. Considering Martridge isn't real, you've pretty much ended up at the lowest point in the vanilla map, but the location has merit. Though the location seemingly comes with no natural defenses, what it does have is good open sightlines, thanks to the surrounding roads. And also the location comes with a vast array of streetlights, ready to illuminate the place for any nighttime work or violence. Under normal circumstances, it's also a very quiet location. The wide open space is a gift for those who want to construct their own base, and there are at least 5 factories or warehouses nearby that can supply you with the weapons, tools, and construction materials you need. The nearest gas station is just up the road. To power your base and the gas station, your best bet for generators is probably the storage facility on the south side of Muldraugh. So long as you've got a vehicle, you have pretty good access to Muldraugh, Rosewood, and Martridge. I think you might want to consider one of the Rosewood gated community houses as a potential base. Sitting on the western edge of Rosewood, this small, affluent neighbourhood stands markedly apart from the rest of the town, thanks to the tall fences surrounding the buildings. You've got your choice of one of 4 two-story residences, each with a garage and a sizable yard. The houses are fully furnished, and you should expect to source quite a bit of early loot from them. With Rosewood being such a small town, you're within walking distance of a police station, gas station, firehouse, and a bookstore. Pretty much everything but a dedicated hardware store, which is fine given how many garages Rosewood has to loot. The fences make the buildings easy to secure, with a furniture barricade or more serious construction. The barred fences even allow you to shoot or stab zombies through them. There is a pond south of town you can drive to for fishing purposes. An easily secured base in the heart of town. A great option for people who want a home they can move right into. I think you might want to reconsider the G.C.E. Corp factory as a potential base. Long abandoned, the factory sits near the very northwest of the current map. While close to a small gas station, the local looting opportunities are extremely poor, aside from a sparse line of buildings along the banks of the Ohio River. Reaching any major settlement without use of a car would be an onerous journey. The building itself is massive, sporting well over 20 rooms, all of which have fallen into a state of decay. Even for a dedicated decorator, it's almost too much space to work with. Despite its size, the building offers little in the way of loot. The factory floor can make an excellent garage. There's an extensive flat roof, which can only be reached by knocking down a wall. No less than 4 staircases lead off the ground floor, making it difficult to secure, though the perimeter itself has few doors or windows. The region is outside of a respawn zone, but the area is moderately populated, and you should expect zombies to trickle in through the woods for quite some time. The location may get a new lease on life when Build 42 expands the map further to the west. I think you might want to consider the Army checkpoint as a potential base. Some called it a hopeless attempt to hold back an airborne virus, but I call it the gateway to Louisville. This area has seen a recent boom of construction, and although much of it looks temporary, it can still serve you well in the long term. The area is surrounded by zombie-proof fences, with only 3 points of entry. The base comes with excellent road access and plenty of room to store and work on vehicles. Within the perimeter, you'll find an enormous cache of military-grade firearms, some guaranteed generator spawns, and also plumbed sinks and ovens. A sledgehammer can provide you access to the Ohio River. You can live in the tents or trailers, or build your own home. There is a gas station not far to the south, though the area is extremely infested. Even closer than the gas station is a warehouse, which you can loot for melee weapons, tools, and construction materials. An excellent choice for a solo player or even an extremely large group looking to have access to LV while remaining well defended. I think you might want to consider the West Point Bridge as a potential base. The Dixie Highway crosses Salt River just to the east of West Point, and is initially only memorable as one of the 2 or 3 routes to Louisville. When considered as a permanent base, however, the place has a lot to recommend it. Despite being within walking distance of West Point, and not far from Valley Station, the bridge is actually extremely quiet. The bridge itself may offer you a working vehicle, but you also have an auto repair shop and a gas station nearby. Being based on the river has the usual advantages, and the woods to the north are mostly clear and suitable for foraging. It might be tempting to set up on the peninsula itself, but you'll be trading away easy vehicle access. The bridge could be turned into a sizable base, but not without significant work. The concrete roadblocks can be lifted with a crowbar and disposed of in a large garbage bin, but the wrecked cars will have to be disassembled. Given the narrow perimeter you have to build up, it might be worth trying your hand at metalworking for a playthrough. A definite fixer-upper, close to the action, but strangely quiet. I think you might want to consider the small fire station in East Louisville as a potential base. The fire station sits between vast residential hubs and a small commercial strip, which includes a hardware store, a hunting supply, and a gas station, all within casual walk from your front door. The base itself is quite small, but surprisingly defensible. Downstairs boasts a good-sized garage, while upstairs provides a compact but sufficient living space, and ready access to a flat roof. You are going to want to lay in some water collectors, as your nearest water source is not all that close. The building has a fully fenced backyard. The fence is a wire fence, so you can see and fight through it. The ground floor doesn't have too many points of entry, and I would definitely be sealing off all those windows and doors with metal sheets inside and out. Sitting near the edge of LV, this base isn't going to lack for action and opportunity, but it's also small enough that a first-time decorator might find new life in the chance to turn this base into a home. I think you might want to consider the Riverside Junkyard as a potential base. Towards the western end of Riverside, there's a lot filled with old junkers. The sole trailer doesn't even have a plumbed sink, let alone an oven or a bed. While this doesn't seem like much to start with, it's not half bad. The tall fence around the junkyard means you only need to secure the gate itself. After doing so, you've got a few dozen cars you can search for loot. From among the cars in the lot, you've got a decent chance of finding at least one that still works, or something you can get working. You're also likely to find plenty of gas spread amongst them. There is a gas station nearby for more long-term needs. Your best bet to find tools to fix your car would be at the hardware store in the heart of Riverside. You're going to want more space than a single structure allows, so this is a base for builders. There is plenty of space, so you can keep it simple or get creative. Easy to get to and easy to secure. A whole town to raid for supplies, and the Ohio River just a short jog away. What's not to like? I think you might want to consider the small military checkpoint as a potential base. If you travel east along the Louisville perimeter, you will find another, much smaller camp, resting between the two tall, barbed wire fences. The fences provide exceptional security, though you can't jump them either, which could be a fatal flaw or at least an impediment to your movements. You could make some holes in the fence, but that might defeat the whole purpose of the base. As is, the small checkpoint has good road access into southeast Louisville. There is even a small gas station very close by, although you won't be able to drive to it, and you can't hop the fence to it either. The lone surviving pump still works so long as it's powered by the Kentucky grid or a generator. As for generators, the location comes with 3 guaranteed generator spawns. The small checkpoint comes with 3 tents, and you've got room for at least a few vehicles. No nearby water, very poor foraging, but if you're looking for a stepping off point to raid Louisville from, and you don't want to set up in a ghost town that is the large army checkpoint, then this might be the compromise you're looking for. I think you should not consider the secret military base as a potential base. Located towards the very southwest of the Build 41 map, you can find a secret military base. While it might arguably score high in the something different category, the place scores abysmally in almost every other metric I consider. Most importantly, the location must be tied in last place for the worst possible road access. Even on day 1, getting to and from the base is a rough ride. Once the trees start growing in, it is essentially impossible to make the trip except by foot through miles and miles of zombie-infested woods. And boy are they infested. The woods around the facility are downtown Louisville levels of hot. Aside from a small armory and a chance for some good bags on wandering military types, the place is surprisingly poor for loot. If you want to fortify the front gate and then grow cabbages till the end of time, the location is functional, but no better than a dozen other choices. For a permanent base, it has little to recommend it. I think you might want to consider the Rosewood fire station as a potential base. Conveniently located just a fence hop away from the residential core of Rosewood, the building comes with a sizable garage, not too many points of access on the ground floor, and a choke point you can defend at the top of a lone staircase. The location comes ready with ovens, sinks, a fridge, TV, and beds. With just a little creative building out the north side of the base, you can reach the roof of the garage. Just note that this roof has killed its fair share of new players. While the building boasts a tall wire fence on 3 sides, the 4th side is wide open. You could seal it up with walls, but not on day 1, and nowhere near as easily as you could some better nearby choices. Despite being on the edge of town, there are a lot of zombies in the area, even in the empty fields to the south. You're likely to find a generator in some nearby garden sheds, and there are 2 gas stations close, but not that close. All in all, a decent base, but one that decorators may find too large to work with. I think you might want to consider a Muldraugh Two Story residence as a potential base. Nestled against the woods on the southeast side of Muldraugh, you can find 10 two-story homes in a gated community. Players who spawn in Muldraugh may even begin in one of these homes. In this case, sheltering in place isn't the worst option. The houses are all 2-story, giving you some extra security in those early nights with no more than a furniture barricade. Later, you can look at sealing off the gaps in the fences. You can complete the fencing around a single house, or, for the same amount of tiles, you can seal off the whole area, though that might be more than you want to defend. There is a pond you can fish in just a short walk through the woods to the south. Go a little bit further and you can set up some traps if you want. The location is roughly equidistant to the 2 Muldraugh gas stations. If you don't get a generator out of the sheds within the community itself, there are 2 storage lots very close by that are going to have something you want. It's not the best, but it's one of the best options within the town limits. I think you might want to consider the Louisville High School as a potential base. The school sits just south of Fossoil Field, right in the heart of Louisville. It will take some organization and aggression to clear the area, but clearing and holding it will be greatly assisted by the tall wire fence surrounding 3/4 of the school. For 17 sheet metal and a barricade, you can seal off the unprotected quadrant and instead try to draw in zombies to attack where your perimeter is strongest. With respawn on, it's going to make for a hot base. The school itself is 2 stories and much bigger than a single player would ever find useful. It starts with some limited amenities, but no proper beds. The sizable yard enclosed by the fence offers some room for foraging. Surprisingly, there is even a body of water a single block away, which you could fish in. I would recommend converting the main entrance into a vehicle garage. There is an 8-pump gas station nearby, though not close enough to be especially convenient. This old high school could become an unexpected fortress. I think you might want to consider the isolated radio tower as a potential base. East of the country club and golf course, a winding road leads up to the top of a hill where you can find a walled-off compound hosting a radio tower. The compound is surrounded by a tall fence, and zooming out, the densely forested region is surrounded by a second fence, though this one is in a poor state of repair. Binding and patching these holes can make for an incredibly secure area. The building comes with beds and a sink, but no sort of oven. It also comes with some bugged items you will need to destroy with a sledgehammer. Likewise, the yard comes with clutter you may want to destroy with a sledgehammer. The base has no convenient water access, but the wider area is good for foraging and trapping. The base comes with road access, though it is a long, winding path, and the base is neither close to any one town nor centrally located on the map. The base is quite small, and even a single player may feel the need to expand further. For a group, however, you've got an isolated area with as much space and wood as you'd ever want. I think you might want to consider a Louisville river house as a potential base. 19 similar houses sit on this long street. The houses are all two-story, have great road access and access to the river. That's not to say they're all interchangeable. My picks for the best of the bunch is house 3, 10, and 19. All three houses are two-story with fireplaces on the ground floor. House 3 has a nice look to it, and the ground floor is quite open plan. The yard hosts a small boathouse, and a tall barred fence covers most of the perimeter. It's also easiest to get to. House 10 and 19 have tall fences around most of their perimeter, with just the front part being the more optimal tall barred fence. House 10's claim to fame is the most beautiful and useful garage I've ever seen. House 19 is right across the road from a gas station, and is the closest to the warehouse and storage facility in LV's industrial sector. You're going to find something along the river to suit a single player or a small group. I think you might want to consider the Muldraugh U-Store-It compound as a potential base. The U-Store-It compound consists of 3 narrow buildings surrounded by a tall chain fence. Once you fortify the single gate, you have an easily accessible fortress in the heart of town. The buildings come with electricity until the power shuts off, and you've got a good chance of finding a generator in one of the rooms. You can even see the nearby gas station from inside the perimeter. What the base lacks is general amenities. You will find couches you can sleep on and maybe a TV in one of the boxes, but the place lacks an oven or even a water source. It does have a water dispenser, which should last you longer than most players live anyway. This base is a definite fixer-upper. The cell-like nature of the storage units means with the help of a sledgehammer, you can convert the existing rooms into doubles, triples, or whatever you like. Of course, you can always build up too. The open area has plenty of space to store and work on a few vehicles, while still having room for a farm as well. A diamond in the rough for those who are willing to give it a little polish. I think you might want to reconsider the Rosewood prison as a potential base. To the west of Rosewood, you can find the Rosewood Penitentiary. The inmates are dead, but they're all still there. Upwards of 800 of them. Oh, and the forest around the prison is inexplicably infested as well. The compound is surrounded by layers of tall fences. With plenty of indestructible windows to help lock the zombies inside the main building, you're probably going to have to do quite a bit of fighting inside, which is never a good idea. The prison has amenities, roof access, its own library, and a small armory. By the time you secure the perimeter and sweep for every last zombie inside, you've probably already been operating out of another base for at least a couple of weeks. For a single player, the base is positively labyrinthine. Anything less than a dozen people are going to find it roomy, to say the least. Whether you see the base as a thing you level up and improve over time, or just somewhere you rest and refuel between raids, the Rosewood prison is unlikely to be what you're after. I think you might want to consider the secure storage lot in northern Louisville as a potential base. Near the northwest corner of Louisville, you can find the secure storage lot nestled among industrial buildings. As hinted at by the name, the lot is secure, with just a single route zombies could use to penetrate the compound, while you have the luxury of being able to hop fences to get in and out. The compound comes with a sink, 2 water dispensers, good quality beds, and a good chance of finding 1 or more generators. In the local area, you have a potato factory, an army surplus, a clone of the North Muldraugh warehouse, the big warehouse, and a strip club. The base has close access to the Ohio River. The nearest gas station is close, but not that close. As far as zombies go, it is still Louisville, but the industrial area is way quieter than either downtown or the dense residential zones. More like West Point on a bad day. If you're looking for a base you've never used before, in an area you haven't explored a dozen times over, then this might be an interesting choice. I think you might want to consider the isolated house in Muldraugh as a potential base. Sitting in the extreme outskirts of Muldraugh, you have a lone house surrounded by a sturdy, tall fence. The house itself is 1 story and about the size of a garden shed. Despite its size, it still has the bed, fridge, oven, sink. What makes this otherwise forgettable house noteworthy is the fence around it. The fence has just a single opening in front. In the early game, you can block this up with whatever you can throw in front of it, while later on you could get more intricate in your design. With the fence and barricade in place, you've got a small but safe yard to work with. So far from the highway, the zombie population is very manageable. You have a lake nearby for emergency water or fishing, though it isn't close enough to be convenient. The base is about as far away from a gas station as you can manage while still being in a town. It's not a brilliant base, but it will do if you want something very easy to reach and secure, and if you don't mind living out of a shoebox, at least until you can expand it. I think you might want to consider the farm north of Muldraugh as a potential base. Through the woods north of Muldraugh, you can find a spacious farm. The area is devoid of zombies, or very nearly so. The farmhouse is 2 stories, and comes with the usual fridge, oven, sink, and beds. It has no television, but you can source one locally. You can build out of the north and west facing windows on the 2nd story to allow you to set up plumbing without needing to get your carpentry up to stair building levels. The area around the farm is a mix of good open sightlines and dense forests. Closer to the house, you have a great many low fences which can assist you with your defense. The farm is close enough to the lake north of Muldraugh to go on fishing trips, but it's not conveniently close. The farm is very far from a gas station. While you can drive to the farm initially, doing so will become more difficult once the tree growth starts. While outshined by some similar options, this is a base you can get to on day 1 and start your new life as an emotionally scarred apocalypse survivor. I think you might want to consider the Holy Haven Cemetery as a potential base. Dominating much of southwest Louisville, the cemetery is an unlikely base. The graveyard is surrounded by tall fences with just 2 openings you will need to fortify. The area is hot, but the fences will help you deal with it. Zooming out, we can see the entire region is crisscrossed with fences, doing much to stymie zombie migration. The graveyard encompasses an enormous area, the size of a few city blocks. It has a few structures, all of which will have power while the power is on, but only the largest of them has running water and something to sleep on. You're going to have to build your own base. You're just doing it in the middle of a city. Immediately to the south, you have a gas station and an industrial district with plenty of warehouses to source tools and construction material. If you find the need to clear away gravestones, they can be destroyed with a sledgehammer or lifted and moved with farming tools. This is an interesting option for people who want to build their own sprawling base right in the heart of Louisville. I think you might want to reconsider Twiggy's Bar as a potential base. Situated on the eastern edge of West Point, Twiggy's Bar has free drinks, so long as you're willing to serve yourself. Despite being on the edge of town, this is still West Point, so it's not exactly quiet. Along with a large supply of alcohol, the bar comes with a sink and a fridge, but that's really it. The bar has just a few points of entry on the ground floor, and a single staircase leading up to the 2nd floor, which you can block up with a chair lock or secure via some deconstruction. The front balcony is not real, so don't try climbing out onto it. You can build out of the north facing windows if you want to hang some water collectors or place a generator. The building has good road access, isn't far from 2 gas stations, and is very close to the Ohio River. The looting opportunities of downtown West Point are just a walk away, and it's adjacent to the local gun shop. While it isn't a terrible base, it's at least subpar, and I don't think it's even in the top 3 bases on that side of town. But if you want to survive the zombie apocalypse while living in a bar, go for it. I think you might want to consider the Rusty Rifle as a potential base. The Rusty Rifle Tavern sits at the very southern tip of Muldraugh and was once a popular drinking spot for truckers filling up at the local gas station. Seemingly similar to Twiggy's Bar in West Point, the Rusty Rifle actually has far more to recommend it. The location is far enough from the center of town to be only lightly populated by the Walking Dead. The building comes with a bar fridge and a surprising number of sinks in case you lose water early. Upstairs you have bedrooms with average quality cots, and the staircase itself is easy to barricade. In the immediate area you have a gas station, bookstore, VHS store, 2 warehouses, and a storage facility. The woods east of town do have a small pond you could fish in, though it isn't conveniently close. If you wanted to, you could build out of the west-facing windows, or, uncommonly, you can just use a hammer and saw to disassemble any of the building's walls, though I would suggest you leave the ground floor intact. A decent building in a great location that you can easily get to on your first day of your new run. I think you might want to reconsider using the far side of the Ohio River as a potential base. Some people eventually try crossing the Ohio River and building a base there. You can cross the river either by using a mod that introduces boats, or by simply building a long bridge across the river. The far side of the river seems completely devoid of zombies, and, well, anything. But this isn't exactly true. Just a few cells have been properly decorated with plant life, but in time, trees will grow across the entire bank. As for zombies, there are almost none. The few zombies you find won't be placed there by the normal population system, but instead by the story system, so they will usually be eating a dead body or something like that. In fact, if you head far to the west, up to the very edge of the current map, you'll start finding hundreds of zombies on the far bank, so watch out for that. If you don't maintain access to the rest of the map, you're going to get bored very quickly. If you're going to travel back and forth by a boat, or you install some sort of mod to populate the far side of the bank with a settlement, then you might be fine. I think you might want to reconsider the cabin in the woods as a potential base. Rural Kentucky has plenty of isolated cabins that are now move-in ready, but the one we're looking at today has the rare distinction of having a well. The cabin sits all alone, deep in the woods to the northwest of Muldraugh, and by necessity it is completely cut off from the roads. The woods around the cabin are usually empty, and you may need to jog for more than an hour to find more than 1 or 2 zombies. The cabin does come with a well right by the front door. The cabin also comes with an antique stove, allowing you to cook or stay warm through a winter blizzard, so long as you forage enough to keep it lit. Though the cabin doesn't even come with lights, it does technically have power so long as the power is still on. Once the power goes out, you'd have to walk all the way back to Muldraugh to get some gas, or more likely just learn to live without it, as you farm cabbages in the woods alone forever. If you like walking huge distances to recover a single backpack worth of loot, and you like the security of the well, then this might be the right spot for you. But even then, I think you could do better. I think you might want to consider the forest cabin on Kingsmouth Island as a potential base. On the Kingsmouth Island map, you always spawn here, and the zombies spawn here. Your best bet to survive is to be somewhere else. On the other side of the island, you have a cabin sitting alone on its own small island. The island is barely defended. It's easy to secure with just a single footbridge you need to block up. The cabin is just 1 story, and it comes with an average quality bed, an antique stove, and a sink. The cabin has ready access to a water source, but so does almost everywhere on Kingsmouth Island. The Kingsmouth Island challenge map predates the Build 41 foraging overhaul, so you can only forage in forest zones, which the small island is largely covered in. The nearest gas station is just a block away. The local school comes with a sizable library, and just beyond that, the police station has a small but well-stocked armory. It's up to you whether you want to retire to your peaceful cabin or use it as a staging ground to retake the entire island.